The Crimson Vow by Dreadblades. The air on Xylos Prime tasted of ash and ozone, a familiar tang to Brother Sergeant Valerius of the Blood Angels. His ceramite boots crunched over the skeletal remains of what had once been a thriving agri-world, now reduced to a charnel house by the insidious tendrils of chaos. Above, the sky was a bruised purple, perpetually choked by the warp storm that had engulfed the system weeks ago, severing Xylos from the Emperor's light and plunging its populace into a nightmare of madness and mutation. The very ground seemed to weep, stained with the blood of billions, a testament to the swift and brutal fall of a world that had once fed a dozen star systems. Valerius moved with the predatory grace of a demigod, his crimson power armor scarred by countless battles, each gouge a testament to a foe vanquished in the name of Sanguinius. The deep gouges on his left pauldron spoke of a duel with a demon prince on Baal Secundus, while the scorched marks on his chest plate were souvenirs from a brush with a Necron Gauss flayer on some forgotten tomb world. His bolter, Truth's Fury, was held ready, its muzzle spitting silent promises of righteous death. The comm bead in his helmet hissed with static, a constant reminder of his isolation. The rest of his squad, the venerable Sanguinary Guard, had fallen defending the orbital defense platforms, sacrificing themselves to buy the fleet precious moments before the warp storm swallowed them whole. Valerius was the last. His mission? Locate and destroy the source of the warp storm, a blasphemous ritual being conducted by a nascent chaos cult before the entire sector was consumed. He was a single crimson spearhead against an encroaching tide of cosmic horror, driven by duty and the sacred legacy of his Primarch. He had tracked them to the ruins of the planetary governor's palace, a sprawling edifice of shattered marble and twisted adamantium that now resembled a grotesque skeletal hand reaching for the poisoned sky. The closer he drew, the more pronounced the psychic dissonance became, a discordant symphony of madness that grated against his augmented senses. It was a cacophony of fear, ecstasy, and the alien whispers of the warp, threatening to unravel the very sanity of a lesser being. The cultists, he knew, were devotees of Zinch, the changer of ways, their sorcery weaving the very fabric of reality into knots, twisting light and shadow into mocking parodies of form. He could feel the pervasive chill of the warp seeping into the very ground, a coldness that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with the absence of life and hope. A flicker of movement in a collapsed archway where ornate carvings of imperial eagles had been defaced with crude avian symbols. Valerius brought Truth's Fury to bear, its target acquisition system locking onto the heat signature in an instant. A cultist, clad in tattered robes adorned with garish, multi-hued feathers, darted out, a crude autogun chattering, its round sparking harmlessly off his ceramite. The bolt round, a miniature rocket, impacted the cultist's chest, detonating with a wet thud and a flash of crimson light. The cultist disintegrated in a spray of gore and bone fragments, a fleeting, insignificant obstacle in the path of the Emperor's vengeance. Valerius didn't break stride. He was a force of nature, a living embodiment of the Emperor's wrath, honed by millennia of war and sacrifice. His path was clear, his purpose absolute. Inside the palace, the air grew heavy with the stench of incense and unholy sacrifice, a cloying miasma of stale blood, ozone, and something sickly sweet and utterly alien. Twisted tapestries depicting impossible geometries and screaming multi-limbed horrors hung from crumbling walls, their colors shifting subtly in the dim, unnatural light. Crude altars, fashioned from the desecrated remains of imperial statuary, dripped with dark offerings, their surfaces glistening with ichor. The cultists were everywhere, their eyes wide with fanaticism, some with crude mutations, extra eyes, elongated limbs, or patches of iridescent scales, gifts from their capricious patron. Their chants, a guttural drone of forbidden words, vibrated through the very ground, a continuous thrumming that threatened to shatter the very foundations of the palace and the mind of any who heard it. "For the Changer!" a voice shrieked, its tone laced with manic glee, and a wave of cultists surged from the shadows, armed with rusted blades, crude bludgeons, and desperate courage born of indoctrination and warp-fueled madness. Valerius met them head-on, a crimson blur of death, a living storm of steel and fury. His chainsword, blade of Sanguinius, roared to life, its adamantium teeth tearing through flesh and bone with sickening ease. Limbs flew, heads rolled, and the ground became slick with the blood of the unfaithful, mixing with the existing stains to form a grotesque, swirling mosaic. He was a whirlwind of destruction, each swing precise, each kill swift and brutal, a testament to the training and genetic enhancements of the Astartes. He felt the familiar surge of the black rage, the ancestral fury of his chapter, the primal urge to tear and rend, threatening to consume him, to plunge him into the mindless bloodlust that had claimed so many of his brothers. But he held it in check, his iron will a bulwark against the madness. Not yet. Not until the daemon was banished, not until the threat was utterly extinguished. He pushed deeper, following the psychic trail to a vast, desecrated throne room. The once grand chamber was now a mockery of its former glory, its gilded ceiling cracked and stained, its imperial iconography defaced beyond recognition. In the center, surrounded by a ring of chanting cultists, whose voices rose to a fever pitch, stood a towering figure. It was a sorcerer, its form shifting and shimmering, with the unstable energies of the warp, cloaked in robes of iridescent feathers that seemed to ripple and change color with every breath. Its eyes, twin points of malevolent light that seemed to pierce through Valerius's very soul, fixed on him with an ancient predatory intelligence. The sorcerer hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers and screeches, each word a discordant note in the symphony of madness.
You are too late. The ritual is complete. Silas Prime shall be reborn in the image of the great conspirator, a jewel in the crown of Sinch, a beacon of change in this stagnant galaxy.
As if to punctuate its blasphemous declaration, a shimmering portal, a vortex of swirling colors and impossible shapes, tore open behind the sorcerer. Through it, Valerius could glimpse the maddening vistas of the warp, a kaleidoscope of raw, untamed psychic energy, and the nascent form of a daemon, its many eyes blinking into existence, its form coalescing from raw chaos, tendrils of warp stuff reaching out hungrily. It was a horror from beyond comprehension, a being of pure malevolence.
Never!
Valerius roared, his voice amplified by his helmet's voxcaster, a defiant challenge against the encroaching madness, a solitary cry of defiance against the encroaching darkness. He charged, bolter spitting fire, the bolts impacting the sorcerer's shimmering shield with crackling energy, each explosion a desperate plea for the Emperor's aid. The cultists threw themselves in his path, a desperate suicidal wave, but they were mere gnats before his righteous fury, swept aside by the sheer force of his charge. He was an unstoppable force, a living icon of imperial might. The sorcerer, sensing the imminent threat, unleashed a torrent of warp energy, bolts of pure, raw magic, crackling with unnatural lightning, which slammed into Valerius's armor. The ceramite groaned under the assault, the force threatening to buckle his augmented frame, to shatter his bones. But he pushed through, his faith a shield against the arcane, his resolve unbreakable. He closed the distance, the chainsword revving, its mechanical roar, a song of vengeance, a counterpoint to the sorcerer's arcane screams. With a final surge of speed, a burst of superhuman acceleration, Valerius was upon the sorcerer. The daemon, still forming, shrieked, its nascent claws reaching for him, its form writhing in frustration as its connection to the material plane was threatened. He ignored it, his focus entirely on the architect of this blasphemy. The chainsword bit deep into the sorcerer's shimmering form, tearing through flesh and bone, severing its connection to the warp with a sickening crunch. The sorcerer screamed, a sound that ripped through the very fabric of reality, a final, desperate cry of a being undone, and then exploded in a burst of arcane energy and iridescent feathers, leaving behind only a lingering scent of ozone and corruption. The portal wavered, the daemon's form flickering, its connection to the material plane severed by the death of its summoner. With a final, guttural roar of frustration, a sound that seemed to echo from the deepest pits of the warp, it was sucked back into the void, the portal collapsing behind it with a sound like a dying star, leaving only residual psychic static in its wake. Silence descended upon the throne room, broken only by the crackle of dying embers, the drip of ichor, and the ragged breaths of the few surviving cultists, their fanaticism replaced by stark terror as the warp storm outside began to recede, its source eliminated. Valerius stood amidst the carnage, his armor smoking, his chainsword still humming, the air around him thick with the scent of spent promethium and fresh blood. The black rage still clawed at the edges of his sanity, a hungry beast within. But the immediate threat was gone, and with it, the need to unleash its full, destructive power. He looked around at the devastation, at the broken bodies and the desecrated symbols, at the ruins of a world that had fallen and been saved, but at a terrible cost. Zelos Prime was saved, for now, but the scars of chaos would forever mar its surface, a grim monument to the fragility of imperial rule. His mission was complete, but the cost had been immense, measured in the lives of his brothers, in the ruin of a world, and in the ever-present threat to his own soul. He was alone, a single crimson angel in a galaxy of darkness, a solitary sentinel against the encroaching night. But his vow remained. He would continue to fight, to bleed, to die if necessary, so that the Emperor's light might one day pierce the deepest shadows, and so that the Imperium might endure for another day, another year, another millennium. He turned, his gaze fixed on the shattered exit, the only way out of this charnel house, and began the long walk back into the ash-choked twilight. Another battle won, another world mourned, and the endless war against the darkness continuing, forever and ever. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and if you found this helpful, give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend. This is Dreadblades, the only Chaos Knight-focused channel on YouTube. See you all on the next video, and remember Papa Nurgle loves you.